Hello, hello. Welcome back.
Hello, so good to see you again.
Good to see you too, dear Atrisa. Welcome back, everyone, to Living Richly with Curo, episode number 43. My name is Anne McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo Private Wealth, and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely partner, Atrisa.
Hello, I am Atrisa Roberts, COO and partner here at Curo. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, as always. So we here at Curo and at Living Richly with Curo in particular are here to inspire, educate, empower you on your financial journeys. And today we are going to be having a conversation with Brian Wendroff, who is a local CPA here in the DC metro area. He is known as the CPA for entrepreneurs. So we are going to pepper him with one question and then some of our own. So we are super excited to have a conversation with him here in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, let's do an A-team catch up. So what is going on in your world, Atrisa?
More of the same, but pretty good. Like most people, I feel like this year is already just flying by, just being really busy. I'm, of course, leaving for another trip to Austin. Again, like we mentioned, spend a lot of time in Austin these days.
Yeah.
So a lot of time moving around. But other than that, in between the busy work and the busy travel, also trying to carve out a little space for some relaxation, for some fun. So I'm trying to be really intentional with making some time for myself in all of the chaos of my calendar as it seems for the next few weeks. But other than that, I'm doing well. I haven't tried any new restaurants yet this year, which is astonishing for me. Well, let me
Yeah.
say not local restaurants. So that's one of the things that I got to get geared up. I missed restaurant week for DC because I was so busy in traveling. So my next adventure is to find a new dining spot in DC to tell our listeners and viewers about.
Ooh, I know we can't wait.
I know, I'm excited myself.
You are our resident foodie and, food critic here at Curo. So we are
I
looking
try
forward.
to help the people in any way that I can.
I know. I know. I always appreciate your reviews. So can't wait. Get on it,
Yeah,
girl.
I'm working. I'm working. I'll get to it. I'll get back to it. Get back to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So how are
Awesome.
things in your world?
Pretty good. We had a hockey tournament in Philly over the weekend.
Right?
My voice is a little hoarse still from screaming so much because we made it to the championship game and in
Yay!
yeah, and we lost. It was a brutal, brutal loss.
Oh,
We actually made it into overtime, so we were tied, went into OT, and it was sudden death, which one of the parents told me it's now called sudden victory because I guess death is too violent.
it's too dark for children.
Back when we were kids, you ran suicides and it was
Right.
sudden death. Not anymore. So anyway, I'm like, oh no, not sudden death. Cause of course my son is the goalie and he is the
Right.
sole goalie of his team. And so there is massive amounts of pressure. But we went into OT into sudden death for us, sudden victory for the other team. And my son blocked the first shot on goal. And then the other kid from the other team high sticked it, which is not allowed, and shot it in with high stick, which should be actually a penalty. But I think the refs at that point were like, let's go home. We're already in overtime.
Oh,
I don't think
wow.
they get paid for overtime. So that was the goal. So that was the winning goal. And our kiddos ended up in second place. But yeah, I pretty much lost my voice. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
that's because I
still
was screaming
wonderful,
all
though. That's fantastic.
weekend.
And shout out to your son. I don't know that we've given them nicknames on the podcast
I know, we need to.
yet.
Just call
But
him
shout out
goalie.
to him for having such a good game. Yeah, but that's terrible that the
I
refs wouldn't
know.
call that penalty or foul or whatever they call it in hockey.
Yeah, it's a penalty. I know. It was
Yeah.
a huge bummer.
Yeah.
And of course, my son takes it very
Yeah,
seriously.
I'm
And
sure.
as the goalie, felt like he let his team down and, like he botched it. And they
Oh.
had come off of winning 2 tournaments. So this was going to be the
Mhm.
third, kind of like the Chiefs. And didn't
Right.
happen like for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a fun weekend and, we had a good time and he had a great time hanging out with his teammates. It was very cold and windy in Philly, but
Yeah, I'm sure.
it was a good time. So,
Good. Well, congratulations. You're a full-time, full-blown hockey mom now. Sure, new role.
100%. Yeah, 100%. The moms and I got matching hoodies and everything to
Oh,
prove
yeah.
it. I am,
You're
like,
all
in.
in.
I am all in. I am that mom now. I'm just owning it, you know?
Yeah, you
It's
should.
fun.
You
Yeah,
should.
it's fun. It keeps them, you know, it keeps them busy, it keeps them physical, it
Right.
keeps them off screens more than they would otherwise be, so
Yes,
I'm here
very
for it.
true.
All right, well, I see our guest Brian, so let's let him in, and I will give him an intro. Well, welcome, Brian. I'm gonna read a little bit of your bio. Your bio is very long, so we're gonna condense it
Sure.
so that we can we'll shorten it so we can spend as much time chatting with you as possible, which is what we all want. But would like to give you an intro so that our listeners know who they are hearing from. So Brian Wendroff is a CPA and the founder of Wendroff and Associates, which is a CPA firm established in 2006. As I mentioned earlier, he is known as the Entrepreneur's CPA and has been at the forefront of integrating AI and automation into tax and financial management, which we definitely want to talk more with you about. Brian is a graduate from George Mason University, former alma mater, mine as well, and served in the US military. So thank you for your service as well, Brian. And he has been recognized here locally in Washingtonian Magazine as a top financial advisor, top financial professional in Northern Virginia Magazine, and also the best CPA firm in Arlington by Arlington Magazine. So, Brian, thank you so much and welcome to Living Richly with Curo.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Teresa. Again, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Of course. So, anytime we have guests join us, especially business owners, we always like to start with just having you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you find yourself where you are now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my entrepreneurial journey happened, it's happened throughout my whole life. Even starting when I was young, I was always dabbling into like business type things. I would sell baseball cards when I was in school. I would sell candy. I would just always look for these kind of like opportunities to have these monetary transactions. But my first experience actually with entrepreneurship was when I was about 6 years old. My father has always been an entrepreneur, and he always had these different types of businesses he had. But these weren't like your normal businesses. These weren't like, he wasn't like an accountant or a doctor, a lawyer, or a financial advisor. He had more like lifestyle businesses. And when I'm saying lifestyle businesses, I'm talking about like whenever he liked, like a hobby, he would turn it into a business.
Mm.
So he was actually a professional magician. That's how lifestyle it was and hobby it was.
Wow.
So one of his businesses was as a professional magician. And just so you know, he's also in the Guinness Book of World Records for fire eating. So that's a pretty interesting thing that happened in
Oh, wow.
1987 that he wrote, and he was in the Guinness Book of World Records. But when he would give his magic shows, though, he would give these shows in like a county fair or a state fair. He would have these shows. And before he performed, he had his opening act, and that was me. I was a huge break dancer back in the days. I loved Michael Jackson. I had the gray colorful vest. I had the white glove, and I loved break dancing. So I was his opening act. And before he would start performing, I would maybe break dance a couple songs. And then after I was done, ladies, I would go down to the audience and I'd pass my hat and I'd ask for like donations and tips.
Tips, nice.
So that happened. And what's so crazy about that story, like one of the times that happened, I kid you not, I probably did it one time and I made around like $100. And I was like, I kind of like seeing the way that was $100. And I remember my mom, she took that money and later that night we went to like Kmart or Walmart back in the days.
Mhm.
And she got me like a G.I. Joe. And I was like, hold up. A G.I. Joe is like $2 or $3 back in the days. Got me and my brother G.I. Joe. And I was like, I just know we made $100. And I started to kind of do the math. And that's when maybe even the accounting thought came into mind. That's like my first experience of like accounting. Like the numbers weren't adding up. But I do remember
Math
that.
is not mathing.
Right. The math doesn't math.
The math doesn't math. It wasn't counting. And that's when I maybe thought about the accounting side. So fast forward though into 2006. I was working for a firm for a couple of years, a CPA firm. I just graduated as an accountant from George Mason University. And I started working for a CPA firm for a couple of years. And I started to realize with the firm I was working with, I felt like they weren't embracing technology back in the days. This is almost 20 years ago. So They weren't embracing technology as well. And I noticed the opportunity that we could maybe give the better customer experience for the customers, as well as the internet was starting to be that thing that you could start to promote, that you could start to market with and start to sell something. So I'm sure y'all used Craigslist or remember Craigslist back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
There was a services side of it. And what I saw was that there's different services they had. And one of the services was tax and accounting services. So I would start posting on that section every day. And all of a sudden we started getting more customers reaching out to us looking for accounting or tax services. And what's really interesting is these customers were quite successful. They were potentially even $1 million organizations looking for a tax accountant. And this was the only way they kind of knew how to do it. They were probably younger entrepreneurs. They probably weren't looking in the phone book. So that allowed me to pretty quickly grow a customer base. And then from there, 20 years later to today, we've had our firm and be able to successfully grow every year and assist our customers with tax and accounting services.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I found one of my first client service associates on Craigslist, and she was phenomenal. And I couldn't believe, I was like, oh, let me try this. But I couldn't believe the caliber of candidates that I got off Craigslist. So
yeah, simpler times too, right? Almost wish we could go back to the Craigslist days.
That's a good point. A simple website.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Brian. So we ask every week, we allow listeners the ability to write in with questions, and sometimes we will answer them on the podcast. We actually got this question weeks and weeks ago from one of our listeners. He's a client also. So shout out to Mark, who is a
Hi, Mark.
regular listener. Hi, Mark. He's the best. So he wrote this question in, and we actually saved it because we thought that you would be the perfect SME or subject matter expert to answer this question. So here is his question. I have been bombarded with ads for various tax saving strategies, such as purchasing state tax credits, investing in assets that throw off losses, etc. They all seem slightly suspicious or downright scams. So what is your opinion, Brian, on some of these so-called tax saving strategies, and are they more like scammy, or are they things that high income earners should kind of pay attention to and consider for their position?
Sure. Yeah, we talk about, like you said, complexity, the internet, marketing all this stuff out that you don't know if it's good or bad. But I will tell you that there's totally strategy out there. You all know this as business owners, 24/7, you're a business. So there's opportunities to kind of think about anything you interact with could potentially be a tax deduction or a strategy, a credit to help you lower your tax liability. I would say two things though. When someone gets acknowledges something about an opportunity, or there's an opportunity to take advantage of a tax deduction, I feel like you have to think about how is it going to affect your lifestyle or your situation. For example, you probably heard about back in the days that people would buy these like huge cars, like a Humvee, to take advantage of a tax deduction. But in a way, it might not relate to that person's lifestyle. Like they might be like an IT, they might be even like an accountant or financial advisor that maybe you don't need a Humvee to do what you do. And you, though, can take advantage of a tax deduction, but at the same time, you're spending money to buy that asset. So it wasn't worth the opportunity to take the tax deduction because it wasn't really going to help you other than give you a deduction. I feel like when you take advantage of tax deductions, see how it can kind of fit into your lifestyle, into your business, into what you do. And then that's an opportunity to go, okay, I'm willing to listen more to see how it's going to affect me because it kind of relates to what I'm doing. I'm more bought in. But as of these tax credits and these other opportunities, there are specific, let's say, I wouldn't say exotic, but unique type of tax credits you can get that are out there and that exist. I'm just going to give you an example because you said tax credit, like state tax credits. There's a state tax credit that we promote called the Virginia Land Preservation Tax Credit. Have any of you heard of that?
Yes.
I have not.
So I'll explain that to you, Teresa. So what it is that obviously Virginia is developing a lot of buildings around Northern Virginia and it's continuing to stretch out. The state of Virginia notices this. And what they said, this is almost like 20 years ago, even more longer, they said they wanted to preserve land. And by doing that, they let people who own land to donate that land to the state of Virginia to preserve it. And what will happen is it will create an easement on that land. And by that, you can't build on that land. So they're trying to preserve the beauty of Virginia, obviously, and not have the state of Virginia be a big, huge set of buildings. And they created this land preservation tax credit because they said, hey, if you own land, you can donate to Virginia. And by donating it, by creating an easement, will allow you to get a federal deduction and also a state credit in Virginia. The issue is that a lot of these people who donated the land, they weren't doing it to take advantage of a credit. They want to just donate the land and take it, get that up. Maybe they were, but they weren't able to get the opportunity to also donate the land and preserve Virginia. And they didn't have high income tax to offset against these Virginia tax credits. So they could be people that are maybe older, that had nowhere to have this land that nobody was going to inherit, so they donated to Virginia. It could be somebody who inherited the land, like a young person that inherited from a grandparent, that they inherit this land, but they don't have a high income tax to offset this credit. So Virginia noticed this as well. And so what they did is they said, hey, you can actually take these credits and you can sell them to other people or give them to other people who do have a high income tax in Virginia, and they can use as the offset against their liability or their tax liability. So what happens is we work with brokers that will sell these credits for, let's say, 85 cents or 90 cents to the dollar. So you can imagine if someone owes, let's say, $40,000 to the state of Virginia, and they buy this credit for like 90 cents to the dollar, they can actually buy this credit for $36,000 and take a $40,000 tax credit. So they save that $4,000. Now that's a cool way to like take advantage. That's a cool way to take advantage of this credit, but it's something unique. It's like, oh my gosh, but that's the allowability is someone to work with a broker and just buy these credits for someone who didn't need it. That's what Virginia noticed. That's the opportunity for the high net worth, high tax, income tax person to take advantage of. The great thing also about that is that I always say, look at these opportunities to see that you can do year to year to year, create a process around. Because if you do these things like one time, you don't even know if it works. So you just kind of have to get through the flow of things. So with credit like this, we work with customers that actually buy these credits every single year. So now they're so used to it that they don't even have to think about, like, what does it even mean? What is the land preservation tax credit? They kind of know about it and they can buy this every year and take advantage of those tax savings pretty well.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So I think yeah. And I think the key here is, and we talk about this all the time, whether it's talking about working with a great financial advisor or a great CPA or a great attorney, I think it also comes down to the professionals that you're getting advice from. So, if you're getting a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad about some sort of tax saving strategy, you probably want to be wary of that. But if your professional CPA who knows your situation, knows what you're trying to do, and recommends these sorts of strategies to you, then pay attention to those and consider those.
Consider them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Professionals do good work.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a reason we exist.
Right. Okay. So what advice, just general advice, might you have for new business owners just starting a company?
Sure. Well, we do this often and we continue to refine how we would communicate this, but there is some general things that from day one we would say, hey, you're starting a business, here's some suggestions. So I probably have a handful of suggestions I would say. I still like to talk about when we talk about these startups, because it's such a beautiful thing to see someone who's about to start a business, how it will grow over time, and the beauty of seeing that growth, just like your business and hopefully like our business, just to see our growth and just kind of see how we learn along the way. But some of the foundational things we would do when we first start. So I would say this. Obviously, when you start a business, you're going to have a lot of different hats. So one of the first things I think about is simplicity. You were even saying that, Teresa, well, things were back when they were simple, like Craigslist, the simple thought of how to use a simple website. So I think about setting up, I always tell our customers to create a separate bank account and a separate credit card account, because you really want to not think about when you have money coming in and money going out, is that personal or business related? So if you set up these separate accounts, you know that you could designate any money coming in from this business as business revenue and any money going out as like a business expense. So when you analyze your information or you need to even come tax time, you can easily know that anything that relates to these accounts is business related. So I always suggest setting up a separate bank account, separate credit card account right at the start. Another suggestion is using accounting software like QuickBooks Online. That's probably the most popular accounting software in the country for small businesses. And even though it's something new to use and you might be, as a new business owner, have a lot of different things you got to do, it still can be relative. And what I'm saying about relative is like when you're a new business, you probably don't have 1,000 transactions happening. You probably have just a handful of transactions happening every month until you steadily grow it. So when you use an accounting software, it's probably not going to take long for you to learn how to like classify those transactions and put them to an expense or the bank account. So it might not take too long because you only have so many transactions. But knowing that you can set this up and start recording this information from day one could be so much important, as to kind of see the future of how this information could be used for decision making, looking at how much you've done over time, how much revenue you made, how do you expend your money throughout your time of your business. Very, very important information. And then you got to think about also this tool like an accounting software like QuickBooks to help you grow the company, where you're going to have to send out invoices. So use the function of that. You're going to have to pay employees, use the functions there. So you have all these different functions that as you scale, you might need to tap into. You might as well tap into that, or no, you can tap into that from day one. So accounting software is very relevant. Another thing I think of with the new business is taxes. Like obviously, we're a CPA firm that focuses on taxes. And for a new business owner, they now become responsible for paying their taxes. And that's also, a lot of us almost like probably just think intuitively like that makes sense, but sometimes that's not thought about. Instead of course, when you work for an employer, you're going to have money withheld every paycheck to pay your taxes. As a business owner, you're now responsible for paying your taxes to the IRS and to your state. So to kind of know that and be aware from that from probably day one, you can start planning your cash flow accordingly to make sure you know how either put money aside and pay throughout the year, usually quarterly, to make sure that you're aware that you haven't owed income tax, or you can at least not have to have this maybe some big surprise come tax time because you've already planned in advance to pay the government. One just rule of thumb, and maybe you've heard this, is for every dollar you make, probably hold about 30 cents to put aside for taxes. And then usually maybe when you file your tax return, you may owe it or get a little bit back, but at least, like I said, it's not overwhelming, a huge surprise that you weren't prepared for. We talked about AI and automation, and I think I would say this too, like from day one, look at what tools are out there. What's your tech stack from day one? And see, what you can use, like QuickBooks Online, Gmail, Microsoft Teams, Slack, what tools can you use from day one to see if it's going to be relevant to what you do at either in the moment in time, or that's coming, it's going to come based on what you're seeing on how you need to run your business. So using just being aware of the new tech stack. There's a cool site called Product Hunt that sends you like an email every week about what new products are out there, new technology. That might be something that you can use to incorporate to your business workflow. And then I would say, just one last thing is, and this is simple but hard, but it's important. When you're a new business owner, it's just you. So what I would say is get ready to ask those questions about if you need help or you need guidance. Build those resources. I know for me, I'm part of like a CPA group, and I joined the CPA group that we talk about best practices. I joined them 2 years after I started the business, and I felt that was already 2 years too late, because I felt like at day one, if I can just start building my network, building my resources, and just to be able to know at any given moment, and this, stuff's going to happen that you're not prepared for, and to know that you have a bench of just a team of people, resources, even your own people that are in your industry that are willing to help you because they've been like that back in the days when they started their business, they're going to be able to help you. And just asking those questions, just kind of having the courage to ask for help is very valid, I think, important for a new business owner.
Oh, that's extremely valuable advice. And I think in summary, because I noticed that there are two kinds of business owners. There are the business owners who set out to be entrepreneurs. They know that they are starting a business. But then there are also what I call like the happenstance business owners, where they realize they have something valuable and they find themselves almost easing into entrepreneurship. But I think the idea that you build a solid foundation for your business from the very beginning, right? The separate account, the accounting systems, looking for the tools and the tech stack, joining masterminds, right? Or, industry groups. I think treating yourself very much like a business in the very early phases is really, really good advice, specifically for those happenstance business owners who just found themselves in business.
Agreed.
Yeah. It'll save you so much more time, energy, and money, right? Because if you come to somebody like Brian and his firm with like a shoebox filled of receipts from God knows how long, and you're like, here, can you put all this into QuickBooks? You better believe you're going to pay a premium for that, because that's a mess that Brian's team now has to clean up, versus if you come to Brian's team with QuickBooks Online, even if it's not 100% correct, right? But at least if you've had systems that you've had in place, that is going to make their lives much easier. So totally agree. All right. So Brian, you talked a little bit about AI and automation, and we are so curious to hear how you are using AI and automation in your firm. How do you approach it as a business owner of your own company?
Sure. I mean, this is something we got even from, like I said, Product Hunt. They were representing products about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and one of them was a product called Zapier. And I'll talk about that shortly. But let's just talk about automation. Automation, simply put, is when there's a trigger, there's an action. I'm just going to explain it just very simply. Think about it when you go to a grocery store. When you go to a grocery store, you start walking towards the grocery door and the door automatically opens up. That's an automation, right? The trigger is you, the person walking towards the grocery store, and the door is the action that opens up for you. That's what we think about now when we run our business, when we do something in our business. We think about that automate first tip mentality, where what can we do to create automation? What can we do to remove steps? What can we do to create something that we don't have to think about anymore because we know we're going to have something else the very next moment, something that's going on that we're not prepared for. So with automation, we use a tool called Zapier. And this is the thing, automation obviously has been done with the $1 million companies, the $1 billion companies. They're the ones that have all the software developers doing this type of stuff for the company. But for this now can be done with literally a person just starting a business with automation. We use a tool, it's called no code. Because you think about automation, you think about, oh my gosh, do I got to be a software developer? With the tools these days, you don't have to be a software developer. You just got to create the idea of what you want to automate, and then you see if it happens. Zapier is a tool that does this. It's a no-code software. It has this acronym inside of it called API. And maybe you've heard of that. It stands for Application Programming Interface. And it has that in the name Zapier. But what it does is it integrates all these different tools to work together. So think about it like this. Let's say every time I send an invoice in QuickBooks Online, it automatically sends a chat with me through Slack or through Teams saying the invoice is sent out. And it sends it to a certain team member. That's an automation. The trigger is an invoice going out of QuickBooks, and the action is a chat on Slack or Teams saying this has been sent out. And when I talk about these automations, you can, and it's almost like when you do something like this, you just kind of like don't have to mess with it again. And now every time this invoice gets sent out, you're sending these information is being communicated to the team member through this chat system. And when I think about these different automation tools, you think about the different software we use. Like they're the best of the best. Like you're using like Gmail to email, you're using QuickBooks to do QuickBooks. They all do something so special, but they don't work together unless you make them work together through like a tool like Zapier. And there's other tools, but that's the tool I wanted to present because we use it. We have probably over 100 different automations. I mean, we have automations on every time we send out an invoice, a survey gets sent out to the customer, depending on the specific invoice, the type of work we've done. So you can not only create these automations, but you can customize them, continue to refine them. And you can imagine like how much time could be saved by you just looking at removing steps. You know that you probably do stuff all the time repetitively. Whatever you think about doing something repetitively, how do you find a way to automate that? And those automations continue to grow every day. Probably every week, we're creating a new automation. But then you take something like ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT, I'm sure you're all using it. A lot of people are using it to grow their business.
Not a Teresa. Not a Teresa. I am a user. A Teresa refuses. She is not on the AI bandwagon quite yet.
Give it some time. Okay. And I can understand that. I can understand that. Like, no doubt. It's a tool, though. It is a tool. So I would say always try to see if you can embrace a tool and see if it's used. But I can see also you can like kind of, you have your own other methods. If they're working for sure. With ChatGPT, we use it in ways that we could help write our emails. We can help create outlines, etc. But ChatGPT can also be used to automate. And this is powerful. Let me give you an example. You could use something like Zapier to give you an example on automation. Let's say every time you get an email that comes in from a customer or someone, an email, you can create an automation to create a reply. That's an automation. The trigger is an incoming email and the action is a reply to the email. But you can incorporate ChatGPT into there to automatically create the response based on the person's email. So that's now creating an automation. It creates a reply email. For this example, you put it in like your draft email. You don't want to send it out probably automatically. You want to create like a little bit of a filter so it doesn't automatically do something, but you can actually incorporate both as AI and automation to do something for you. And it can even make the experience even more automated, more flowing to use both of those tools to be able to accomplish something for yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think you all are focused a lot on the efficiency and the repeatable processes. And Teresa and I talk about this, and our team talks about this all the time, because oftentimes, we'll be doing something for a client and it will have 25 different steps, and maybe 3 or 4 people on our team have to touch part of those steps. And so for us too, we're definitely not as heavy in automation and AI as you are, but we are big believers in workflows. And we always talk about making sure that one of those steps does not get dropped, right? We don't want everybody to have to remember the 24th step of a workflow or a process, because that's just impossible. Plus, I want everybody to be using their brain cells for more productive things, right? Like use that energy and use your brain for creativity and for going above and beyond for the client experience. I don't want you to have to remember, did I check the box on, XYZ screen? So there's efficiency, there's repeatable processes, and then there's also, I think, just making sure that things don't slip through the cracks so that the client experience is consistent.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's awesome.
automation can do that, right? It's going to even prevent errors, because this is almost like, we have human error, and this prevents
Yeah.
the human error. So it has these repeatable steps in the process, but it's almost like, I always tell my team, this needs to work 100%, because that's exactly how you programmed it to work 100%.
Right.
And no doubt what you said, Ann, I tell this to my team, even right now, it's tax season. I'm like, do everything you can do to not think. Whatever you can automate, whatever you can do to stop the thinking part, because there's no doubt you're going to have to think about certain things. But whatever you can do to not think, that's important too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'll just add the disclaimer for our viewers and listeners is that
before you judge her, before you judge her, listen
me,
up.
I understand the capability of AI and how it helps, especially from an efficiency standpoint. The majority, not all of it, the majority of my concern around it is more environmental than it is about me not embracing technology. So I just have concerns about the amount of energy needed to generate and run things like ChatGPT, because I am partially or part-time environmentalist as well. So just wanted to put that out there. I'm not an oldie boomer who doesn't understand technology and doesn't want to use it. I have other concerns around AI. So that's just my personal disclaimer before everybody starts, calling me boomer, like my sister likes to do sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely understandable.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So we have another question more about your industry. Now, we are seeing these headlines more and more often. I actually just read an article about this yesterday, but 90% of the CPA workforce will hit retirement age in 2023. What has that been like, and what have you done to position your firm for this eventuality? It seems to be a dying profession, which seems like it may create opportunity, but also some challenges. So just share a little bit with us about what your experience with that has been like.
Sure. I mean, this is something we look at Teresa, because we just know that to kind of go about the profession itself, it's a beautiful profession. I mean, I'm just going to tell you like a quick story. Like I remember talking to a customer, very successful customer, making millions of dollars. He goes, Brian, I hate numbers. And when I heard him say that, I'm like, oh, wow, I think we got a job for a little bit, because a lot of people are going to run their businesses and do their things, but they're not going to be so focused on the numbers. They need someone like us to be able to communicate those numbers and help them use those numbers for decision making. So the job is neat. We've been doing this very long, right? The accounting's been done since the taxes and all that's been done since biblical times, but we know it is important, and it's a function of any organization. So with a lot of these CPAs retiring, I mean, to us, it's an opportunity, because we now have an opportunity to support the customers and continue to develop our product and inform our customers and give them our product. We want to do that. We're passionate about what we do. We want to help them continue to grow their business. That's our goal. Like you said, and to help an entrepreneur succeed. There's nothing better than seeing an entrepreneur succeed. It's like the most beautiful thing to see them grow something they created out of nothing and create something just like you're doing. So it's really cool to see that. So what do we do though to respond to that? Well, first of all, let's talk about what's happening. I think what's happening about, people retiring on any type of industry, but it's more about where's the people coming in, the people graduating college and going, I want to be an accountant. I think and this is something about accounting. Accountants don't like changes a lot. So what they do when an accountant communicates, they like to keep that in the air, like what they communicate for a long time. And what I think's happening is a lot of these students are hearing that accounting is draining, it's overwhelming, it's stressful, and because maybe let's say tax season. But when you really see the situation right now with the technology and being able to, let's say, work from home, I'm at home right now. This has actually changed the game. Think about someone, let's say 15, 20 years ago. they would start in taxi in the most intense time of our year, taxi for a tax account. From January to April, working is our busiest time, working on many, many tax returns. But back in the day, someone would come in the office at like 7 a.m. and they wouldn't leave till 10, 11 at night. That is draining. That is intense because think about that time. You all know this when that time when you're, let's say after 5, 6 o'clock, when you spend time with your family, maybe for dinner, go out with them, do something until maybe they go to sleep or something. That time is precious. I think that was lost. And all these accountants badmouth that and go, you know what? You don't want to do this. People are seeing it as their managers and the partners, the people are seeing up top, and they're seeing that, and then they're relaying that to their friends and downstream to these students. So a lot of students are thinking that the accounting profession is so intense, it's overwhelming. But with the technology and all the tools these days, working remotely, I think you now can create more flexibility out of that. And that's what we do. We've learned that we try to create a peaceful environment for our team members in a way that the work can be flexible. You can start at 10 o'clock in the morning and maybe end at like 7, or you can start at 6 in the morning and end around 3. And then maybe you pick back up after 9 or 10 at night for a couple hours and you get your job done, but you did it in the way you wanted to do it. You did it with the flexibility in that situation, and you're more peace at doing that. Now, there's other things too to add to that. A third of our workforce, or our team, work fully remote. So that's pretty interesting too. That opened our opportunity to not only, let's say, hire in Northern Virginia where there's a lot of jobs, but then have an opportunity to actually hire individuals throughout the country where there's maybe an opportunity for them to work here and then maybe there's not as much jobs over there. So that is actually really important too with the technology to even add to that. But now we have team members overseas worldwide. One of my partners is from Sri Lanka, and we have 2 Sri Lankan team members that have joined our team this year to assist us in accounting. So we're looking at really just continue to, like I said, embrace technology to be able to create a peaceful environment, use the tools to be able to communicate effectively with our team, whether they're in our office or working remotely, because that's important too. Communication's always number one. You got to put on top of that, be able to communicate, making sure our teams feel welcome, make sure they feel good about what they're doing, and also they feel good about and proud and what the work they're performing. We want to continue to give them good feedback, communicate along the way, but no doubt, I think the compounding profession is a beautiful thing. There's, like I said, some people don't like numbers, and that's our opportunity to help them. But at the same time, we can do it in the way we want to do it, the more peaceful way and environment.
Yeah, love that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brian. Well, the time has been flying by. This has been such an awesome and
fantastic
informative conversation. Yeah. So our last question that we always love to ask all of our guests, Teresa and I answered this question also on our original episode, but what does living richly mean to you?
Sure. To me, and thanks you for asking that, for like living richly, to me, the word rich, to me, doesn't have to think about, you don't have to think about, to me, you don't really think about money when you think about living richly or being rich. To me, rich is about having a feeling, like almost like moments. Like when I think about living richly, that means like, well, even what I just said, being able to be with my family, being able to kind of take a walk by myself, being able to walk with my family, have a good conversation, be in this podcast with you. To me, it's all about a feeling, just a moment. And to be able to know and be present in this moment and be able to be present in the moments that are, to me, the most important things, whether they be with your family, with yourself, that's to me being rich. Not about really money. To me, even the most poor person can live richly just by kind of having those experiences, being present, being able to just enjoy the moment with family, friends, or within yourself. And then that to me is feeling richly.
Yeah.
Love that. This is from a numbers guy.
Right. Very poetic.
Yeah. Living richly is about a feeling. I love that. So, well, Brian, our time is up with you, but we just want to thank you so much for joining us. And we will be sure to link Brian's website and all of your social media. I know you all are very active, putting a lot of really great educational content out there. So we'll make sure that our viewers and our listeners have access to that. We'll also try to get a link to the product hunt that Brian mentioned. So if you're interested in checking that out, as well as a link to Zapier, because Brian talked a lot about how, they use that in their firm. So thank you again, Brian, for joining us. Thanks for listening in to another episode of Living Richly with Curo. Quick reminders, housekeeping. Send us in your questions like we answered today, podcast@curoprivatewealth.com. And if we answer your question on our podcast, we will send you an Amazon gift card as a thank you. Please make sure to subscribe so you are aware every time we drop a new episode, which is every Friday. And be sure to give us those stars and comments and likes and all the things. 5 stars, of course, no less than 5. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. And until then,
Live richly.